The intelligence analyst shouldn't have known the course layout. Captain Sarah Mitchell wasn't supposed to understand barrier transitions or weak-hand shooting. But when she shattered a 15-year record by 31 seconds and left Delta Force operators speechless, one question haunted Camp Mackall. If her file showed only desk work and analysis, who taught her to move like a ghost warrior that even Tier 1 operators had never seen? Captain Sarah Mitchell stood at the edge of the tactical training complex at Camp Mackall, North Carolina, watching 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta operators run their morning drills. At 29, she was an Army intelligence officer currently detailed to the Central Intelligence Agency, a temporary assignment that brought her here to brief on Middle Eastern threat assessments. The Delta operators treated her with professional courtesy, nothing more. To them, she was another analyst from Langley, someone who'd studied their world through satellite imagery and signal intercepts, but never lived it. They didn't know about the private range in rural Montana, where she'd spent every weekend of her childhood, or the man who trained her, a retired operator from a Tier 1 unit who happened to be her father. Master Sergeant Rick Torres, the senior enlisted operator present, nodded politely when she entered the briefing room. Just another visitor to entertain before they got back to real work. Sarah Mitchell grew up different. Her father, retired Sergeant Major Michael Mitchell, had served in elite special operations units before an IED blast forced his medical retirement. Unable to deploy, he poured everything into his daughter. Not to make her a soldier, he never wanted that life for her, but to make her capable of surviving anything. Before we continue, please comment below where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe to the She Force Tales channel. The basement of their Montana ranch became a private training facility. Under strict supervision and with safety protocols that would make range safety officers proud, her father taught her firearms fundamentals from age 8. By 10, she was competing in regional precision rifle matches. By 14, she could read wind better than most military marksmen, calculate holdovers in her head, and maintain dime-sized groups at 50 meters. But Michael Mitchell taught her something more important than marksmanship: invisibility. Never show your full capability. Never give anyone reason to fear you. Let them underestimate, he'd say during their evening training sessions. She learned this lesson watching him navigate civilian life, how people relaxed when they didn't know what he'd been. She chose intelligence work deliberately. The Central Intelligence Agency needed analysts who understood operators, and her test scores guaranteed placement anywhere she wanted. But sitting in briefing rooms, watching operators plan missions based on her intelligence, she felt the familiar itch. The muscle memory her father had carved into her bones demanded expression. Her father had called the night before this trip. "Remember," he said in his gravelly voice, "you're there to brief, not to compete." She'd agreed, but plans have a way of changing. The morning briefing went smoothly until someone mentioned the stress course. Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Rodriguez, the squadron leader, was explaining their training evolution when one of the younger operators, Staff Sergeant Alex Chun, brought it up. "Nobody's touched Snake's record in 15 years, Chun said with pride. 2 minutes, 47 seconds. Perfect score. That course has humbled every visitor who's tried it." The course was legendary. A combination of precision shooting, physical stress, and problem-solving under pressure. Shooters had to engage 52 targets while navigating obstacles, changing magazines under time pressure, and maintaining perfect shot placement. Most trained operators couldn't break 3.5 minutes. Snake's record was considered unbreakable. Sarah found herself studying the course layout on the wall chart. Her father had built something similar, though smaller, on their property. The patterns were familiar: transition drills, barrier work, strong hand/weak hand segments, elevated positions. The question escaped before she could stop it. "Can I give it a try?" The silence was immediate. Then someone laughed. Not cruel, just dismissive. Chun shook his head. "Ma'am, no offense, but this isn't a familiarization course. This is what we run before deployments. People get hurt attempting it without proper training." Rodriguez was more diplomatic. "Captain Mitchell, we appreciate your interest, but our insurance protocols don't cover visitors on the advanced courses. Maybe we can show you our basic marksmanship range instead." Master Sergeant Torres added, "This isn't about shooting paper, ma'am. It's about shooting under combat stress. Different world from intelligence work." Sarah nodded, accepting their dismissal gracefully. But something in her expression made Command Sergeant Major Frank Washington, the senior enlisted advisor who'd been silent until now, take notice. He'd seen that look before, in operators who knew something others didn't. After the briefing, Washington approached her privately. "Captain, you've shot before. Not range shooting, real shooting." She met his gaze steadily. "My father taught me a few things, Sergeant Major." "Who's your father?" When she told him, Washington's expression changed entirely. Every Delta operator knew the name Michael Mitchell, the man who'd set selection records that candidates still compared themselves against 20 years later. That afternoon, Sarah stood alone at the basic pistol range they'd offered her, putting rounds through paper with mechanical precision. Every shot centered, grouped so tight they looked like a single hole. But it felt like playing scales when she could perform symphonies. She thought about her father's legendary performance during selection, how he'd set benchmarks other candidates still measured themselves against. About the nights he'd made her run their home course until her hands ached, then taught her to shoot through fatigue. Not to make her hard, but to show her what she could endure. The thing about being underestimated, he'd said, is that it only hurts if you need their validation. But if you know what you are, their opinions become irrelevant. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. "Heard you're at Mackall. Don't do anything I would do." She smiled. He knew her too well. Knew that putting her near that course was like putting flame near gasoline. 21 years of suppressed capability begged for release. Command Sergeant Major Washington appeared beside her. "Captain Mitchell, your father never mentioned he had a daughter in the intelligence community." "He's protective, Sergeant Major," she replied, changing magazines with speed that made Washington's eyebrows rise. Washington watched her shoot another perfect group. "You know, Captain," he said carefully, "training safety protocols require senior, enlisted supervision for the stress course." Washington arranged it carefully. After hours, range safety on the books, a signed waiver, and 3 senior enlisted watching every step. Word spread quickly through the team spaces. The visiting intel officer wanted to run the course. The command sergeant major had authorized it, supervised, documented, all safety protocols in place. The operators gathered out of curiosity. Someone mentioned small wagers on her time. Nothing official, just typical team banter about whether she'd break 4 minutes. By 1900 hours, 60 operators had gathered. What started as curiosity became an event. A few phones came out to record, personal videos, nothing official. Sarah arrived in borrowed gear, tactical belt, and a lightweight chest rig they used for training. Everything slightly too big, adjusted as tight as it would go. She'd watched videos of the course throughout the day, memorizing positions, calculating angles. Her father had taught her that visualization was half of execution. Rodriguez pulled Washington aside. "Sergeant Major, if she gets hurt, this is on both of us." Washington nodded toward her hands as she checked her weapon. "Watch how she moves, sir. That's not training. That's programming." The range safety officer, Sergeant First Class David Park, briefed her on the course. 52 targets, varying distances from 5 to 40 meters. Some moving, some partially obscured. Time starts on the buzzer, stops when the last target falls. Minimum passing score is 48 hits. The course record is 247 with a perfect 52. Sarah nodded, checking the service pistol they provided, a Glock 19. Not her preference, but she'd adapt. She pulled out her phone, typed a quick message to her father, about to do something you would do. His response was immediate. Make them remember why they should never underestimate a Mitchell. The buzzer sounded. Sarah moved like water, finding its path. No wasti motion, no hesitación. The first 7 targets fell in 4 seconds. She flowed through the barrier section, switching shoulders without conscious thought, the gun becoming an extension of her will. The operators stopped talking after 20 seconds. By 40 seconds, half the course was clear, and she hadn't missed once. Her reloads were fluid, support hand already indexed on the fresh magazine, while her strong hand ejected the empty. She took the moving targets while in motion herself, calculating lead and drop without pause. At 90 seconds, Chin whispered to nobody in particular, "Holy shit." The weak hand section should have slowed her. It didn't. 21 years of ambidextrous training made handedness irrelevant. She engaged the long-distance targets with the same speed as the close ones, compensating for the Glock's trigger without conscious adjustment. 2 minutes. Only 12 targets remained. This was where fatigue should set in, where technique should degrade. Instead, she accelerated. The final section, the hardest, with targets partially obscured by non-shoots, she cleared in 18 seconds. Each shot threading the needle between obstacles with surgical precision. The last target fell. Time. Sergeant First Class Parr called, his voice cracking. 2 minutes 16 seconds. Perfect score. The silence was deafening. Then Command Sergeant Major Washington spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. That's not just a course record. That's 31 seconds faster than our best shooter. Sarah was already clearing the weapon, checking the chamber, holstering. She looked at the assembled operators, some stunned, some calculating, a few with newfound respect. Rodriguez found his voice first. Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that? Despite unofficial rules against it, clips from the run circulated quietly among trusted circles within hours. By morning, Sarah's phone had 23 messages from various unit commanders asking about her availability for training their shooters. Senior leadership at CIA wanted a debrief. Someone higher up was asking how a desk analyst ended up beating Delta's best. 5 days later, after she'd returned to Washington, Command Sergeant Major Washington called. The team wanted you to know something. We verified your time independently. 2 minutes 16 seconds. It didn't just break Snake's 15-year record. It obliterated it. More importantly, Rodriguez's squadron had requested that Sarah be assigned on temporary duty as their intelligence liaison for the upcoming Middle Eastern deployment. Not a permanent transfer, but an embedded detail. Someone who understood their world that intimately, could provide intelligence they could trust. Absolutely, she'd answered without hesitation. Her father called that evening. Heard you caused a stir. You told me never to show full capability, she said. He laughed, the sound rich with pride. I also taught you that sometimes the best way to protect yourself is to show just enough capability that nobody wants to test the rest. They'll never underestimate you again. The following month, she stood before the same briefing room at Camp Mackall. But now, the operators leaned forward when she spoke, studying her assessments with newfound respect. Chenette even asked sheepishly if she'd teach him her reload technique. Master Sergeant Torres summed it up during a quiet moment. We thought we were humoring a tourist. Turns out we were watching a professional pretend to be one. Sarah smiled, remembering her father's words. Sometimes the best intelligence operatives are the ones nobody sees coming. And sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone assumes is harmless. She'd learned to be invisible in plain sight, carrying 21 years of her father's training beneath the surface of a CIA analyst. The operators at Camp Mackall would never make the mistake of judging by appearances again. Because true capability doesn't announce itself. It simply performs when the moment demands it.